So welcome to Profile 3 TV, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Scott. So Scott, thank you for coming in and having a chat with us today. I'm going to let you tell us actually all about yourself and what you do. So over to you.
Oh, and with a difficult question first. Well, yeah, my name's Scott Stevenson. I'm the founder of The Stevenson Way, which is my business name and the name of my upcoming book. But basically, The Stevenson Way is just my path to better mental health. I've lived most of my adult life with really poor mental health over lots of various different reasons through to 2017 when I had a sort of road to Damascus moment and finally realised that I needed to change what I was doing or my world was going to end. And The Stevenson Way is just purely me charting how I got from that my lowest point to the as I often say, the happiest, smiliest, clinically depressed man you're ever likely to meet. And again, and that's my thing. I don't have any fear or shame or stigma about what I've been through in the past. I now own it. And because of that, it has very little power over me, which has allowed me then to take the rather brave decision to leave my very well-paid job in the health service, go self-employed and then decide after a year of self-employed that really I didn't want to do what I was doing. I wanted to make a difference in people's life and fight stigma. So now that's what I do. I tell my story. I run workshops and I do keynotes, speaking, all designed to just, with every single conversation, reduce the stigma around mental health. So people understand what mental health is, difference between mental health and mental illness, and just to reduce that stigma so we make it as normal as talking about having a cold to as having depression or sadness or anxiety. That's the goal. I'll probably never see it in my lifetime, but that's what I hope to achieve. Amazing.
And what then is the Stevenson Way?
Well, the Stevenson Way, as I say, it is the business, but what it is, I started my recovery in 2017 and then all the way through into sort of mid-2018. And I just sat down one day and realised, I've been getting this wrong for 27 years, looking at the news, the suicide stats and all the rest of it. And I discovered in all my research that it boils down to that every human mind is unique. Mm-hmm. Everybody's mental health problems or issues are unique. So why are we trying to fit everything into CBT or therapy or antidepressants? Mm-hmm. So I decided to just go on an exploration of trying to find out what it was that had worked for me and what hadn't. And then I just brought all of this together and thought to myself, you know what, other people might benefit from this. And then I hummed and hawed for a really long time about, who am I to tell anybody else how to live their life and all the rest of it. And then I got a long, hard look at what I'd been through. And if trauma was an Olympic sport, I'd be a gold medalist because I've been through a lot in my life. Very lucky, very unlucky, depends on how you look at it. But I've experienced things a lot of other people never would. So that gave me a perspective about what's going on. So I'm also not neurotypical, I'm neurodiverse. So I'm on the autism spectrum. Both my children are on the autism spectrum. So I see things as problems and puzzles to be solved. So that's what I did for myself. I just basically looked at myself as a puzzle and stopped feeling sorry for myself and tried to figure it out. And so the Stevenson Way is my 6 sections of how I got from being at the worst to being at the best and highlighting what worked for me. And then all I've done is put in everything else that didn't work for me, so give people choices. And the idea is you could work through the Stevenson Way if you're in a bad place, and you would probably, hopefully is not important enough. You probably find something that will allow you to get to a better place. And once you've taken the first few steps, the rest of them are easy. It's always the first one of admitting you've got the problem and then choosing to do something about it. That's the hardest. For me, my problem was I was lying to myself for a long, long time.
Amazing. And when you mention mental health, a lot of people will, get a shiver and maybe not feel comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, and that's exactly the stigma. That's the point. It's don't talk about that. Don't talk about suicide. So we'll just throw it straight out there. I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder because at the age of 19, I turned up as a young copper to an IRA terrorist scene where a man had been blown to pieces, and that picture has never left the inside of my head ever since. I then did another 6 over the next year or so for various reasons. Went to the first Gulf War, went to the second Gulf War, went to Kosovo, and a really long military career with lots of bad stuff in it. And that gave me post-traumatic stress disorder. What I didn't know was I was autistic. I'm only in the process of being formally diagnosed now.
Wow.
I didn't know until 45 that there was even a possibility it was going on. So I've got all these different things that people would talk about, adverse childhood experiences and genetic things that predispose you towards bad mental health. So I had that all going on. But I had secrets. I dealt with things in very strange ways. So my secret was I tried to kill myself a couple of times, never told anybody. And my other secret was I was a bulimic. So I was eating, throwing up, eating, throwing up. Mm-hmm. Every time I got stressed, my coping mechanism was to eat and throw up. So that was my dirty little secret. I was happier to be known as a drunk than I was to have people think I had an eating disorder. Because, everybody drinks and social, it's acceptable. So I hid my eating and my purging, my binging behind alcohol. So that's my whole adult life from 18 when I joined the army through to 40 when I retired, then carrying on into my second career in the health service. It was all those same patterns just going on about, and people just don't want to talk about it because they're scared that they'll be judged. As a business owner, I'm scared that people won't do business with me. They'll think I'm unreliable, that they'll go somewhere else. That if people knew what you were really like, if they really knew you, how could they love you? They'd walk out and leave you. For years, I felt that the biggest threat to my life and livelihood was that if my wife ever left me, I would be destroyed. As it comes to pass, that's happened, and everything I feared never did. My life's actually got better. And it's just one of those things. So we don't talk about it, especially not in Northern Ireland. I mean, it's all over the news at the moment, the Deloitte Mind Mental Health Report, the statistics, the money it's costing. And there's awareness everywhere, but normal people don't have the conversations. Husbands and wives don't have the conversations. Mothers and daughters don't have the conversations. You can have it in the abstract, but we don't have it on a meaningful human-to-human basis very often. And that's why, as people still don't talk about suicide properly. It's just one of those things. All of that goes together is what the stigma is. And until we change that conversation, until we change the way people view things, we're not going to make much benefit, and the health service structures are not going to be able to cope.
Yes, and do you think that's because people here, we think if we don't talk about it, it's just feels like it's further away from our own lives?
It's one of those things. If you don't mention the elephant in the corner of the room, isn't it?
No one sees it.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. We'll all pretend it's not there. I mean, we all see people struggling, and we all know what it's like to struggle. You know you're struggling before anybody else does, but you will always tell yourself something different. It's always something. It's not me, it's them. It's not me, it's this. One of the phrases I always talk about is this concept of I'll be happy when. And we all tell ourselves that we'll be happy when we get the promotion, when we get the new job, when we get the new house, when we buy the Ferrari, or whatever it might be. And then once you get that, you then tell yourself, I'll be happy when something else. And you're constantly delaying the gratification, delaying the satisfaction for later on when you do something else. Yet at the same time, we're all plugged into social media, which is entirely about immediate gratification. Well, I put a post up, why has nobody liked it? Oh, they all hate me. And these two things are going on in most people's life as a constant battle all the time. And that just creates that conflict. And one of the things I learned to do was to quieten that noise, to go back to the basics of what made me who I am today. So there's a Latin phrase called temet nosce, and it's basically know thyself. And that's what I worked with, was I needed to know who I was, where I came from, and what I was all about before I had any hope of fixing myself. So that's what I did. I went back to, what made Scott tick, and I tried to understand it all and try to put it all into context. And that's what I do now with my stress workshops and my workshops with businesses. As I come in, I use my story as an example to tell other people. I then show them all in graphic detail the mistakes I made, but without wallowing in pity or anything, because I'm comfortable with it. Explain why I made the bad decisions I did, put them into relatable materials, and then give them the toolkit and advice and the guidance so they can go off and make changes for themselves. End product being, hopefully you get a better and more engaged workforce, you get less sickness, less absence, and everybody is a win-win. The problem is here in the National Health Service, people don't want to pay for looking after them. And North America lives in a whole society where everybody goes to therapy because of the way their health system works. Here, we've got huge waiting lists to go. Unless you've got private medical care, getting therapy is almost impossible. It costs a lot of serious money. If you're on the breadline, unless you can get a charity to do it for you, you've got nobody to turn to. So that's where I sort of, in my head, I had the idea that, there could be something more out there for people to help them avoid making some of my mistakes.
Incredible. And it's the personal stories that actually resonate with people that you're talking to, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got difficulties. Just because my story is big and bold and brash doesn't mean that your story is any different. I mean, your story is every bit as important to you as anything you ever heard on opera, or Oprah, or however you pronounce her name. Again, it's just one of those things, the big stories, everybody gravitates to the big stories, but the little stories are every bit as debilitating, every bit as dangerous to you as somebody else's huge one. And the stresses and strains of just leading normal life these days are incredibly difficult. When I think what my life was like at 14, it was a breeze compared to my daughter's 12 now at the moment, and her life is so complicated compared to what mine was at 12-year-old because of social media, because everybody's 10 years more advanced than we were at that age, because they know so much more, they're exposed to so much more. So this pressure on teenagers today mentally is exponentially greater than it ever was on my generation, and way beyond what it was on my parents' generation. But we haven't changed how we do school. We haven't changed how we teach them, how we educate them. We just give them all these tools and let them go off into the viper's den of the bad part of social media. So again, it's all part of it. All comes together. And like my story, it is what it is. It's mostly bad decisions, alcohol, drugs, eating, risk-taking, all those silly things, throwing some attempts at suicide and all the rest of it. But I'm here, I'm happy, I'm smiling. I've got two wonderful children. I'm about to get divorced, I'm about to get married. It's not a sad story, it's a story of triumph, success and redemption. And even after 27 years of getting it wrong, you can still get it right.
Incredible. So what happens? So you do sessions then with companies and with individuals? What does a session look like?
So primarily for me, the favourite session is I do a number of different things. So I do public speaking, so that's the classics that come along, stand up, deliver a keynote address to the audience and on whatever subject or whatever they want to talk about. And I've got 2 or 3 different subjects I talk about: stress in the workplace, the myth of the modern work-life balance. And I just use my life as examples and learning to highlight some of the faulty thinking that could be out there. And the things I enjoy most are working with workplaces or groups or like rugby clubs or anything like that. And then I run what's called a introduction to stress workshop and a stigma busting workshop. And those are basically the stress one is to understand stress, why you get stress, how it works psychologically, how it works physiologically, how it works neurologically, and how it works for you personally, because everybody's reaction to stress is different. We all, if you get a room for 100 people, say, who's stressed? 99 hands will come up, and the other one's asleep. So it's just one of those things that we all understand it, but we don't understand why we get stressed or how we respond to it. So I take people through the understanding of the basic stress model, what's good ways to deal with it, bad ways to deal with it, and everybody, you can see the light bulbs going off in everybody's heads, like, I do that, and my dad does that, or so on. And that's like you just do with them, and then it usually runs 2 or 3 hours. And then again, my sort of premier product is I run a full sort of 6 to 12 week program with employers. So basically just working with their staff to combat stigma, combat stress, design stress out of their workflows. Because what I kind of think, classic business is you do everything as it comes along. So you do it this way because that's how it had to do, because it had to be done that first Friday for a deadline. And then all of a sudden you do it every Friday for the same time. And it becomes written in stone that on Friday you do this. And nobody's ever thought to look at the processes and the way they do business about whether it actually causes people unnecessary stress, unnecessary deadlines, unnecessary knockbacks. So I do, again, a stress exam or stress test, I like to call it, on businesses for what's causing their staff stress. And then if you can engineer out the stress out of the process, you doing prevention. Because everything I work on is designed at prevention rather than cure. I'd rather work with somebody now, today, so that they can remember my little voice in their head 3 years down the line when they get to a bad place, than trying to fix people. Because I'm not qualified to fix people. I'm not qualified in any way in mental health. I'm just going from my own lived experience. So it's absolutely prevention's better than cure is the theory behind it.
Amazing, amazing. And you mentioned the myth of the work-life balance. So you're going to tell me that doesn't exist now?
But to me, it's a complete. It is a complete myth, because and you hear we all know the motivational quotes. Insert image, insert quote, and go off and be motivated. We all see it. Instagram's full of it, Facebook's full of it, LinkedIn not so much. TikTok's full of people doing it, but they're dancing at the same time. Again, it either works or it works or it doesn't. But the point is, we've all been told we have to get this work-life balance, and for me, it's fundamentally flawed, because work is life and life is work. You don't need to balance it. You just need to make sure you're being healthy about both of them. Whereas everybody, I have 20 hours of work this week, so I need 10 hours of play. But what we do is we do 80, 90 hours of work. In those 80, 90 hours of work, we never spend 5 seconds on ourselves in that entire 80, 90 hours. And then we come home, we're frazzled, we're fried, and we've got no time for anybody. Husbands, wife, children, dogs, they're all out the window. But we're all doing it because I have to do this, because I have to succeed, I have to have the money, I have to have the holiday, I have to have the car, because I'll be happy when I have all of these things, as opposed to just coming in, kissing your wife and kids, and being happy because you're looking at their smiling faces. I'm a huge fan of the ancient wisdoms of the Stoics, of Lao Tzu and the Chinese philosophers and Stoicism. Again, I used to think this was all hippie. I can't say that. I don't know. It's good. You know the SHIT word. Yeah, but I had no time for it. But as part of this recovery, I just delved into it, and as soon as I did, it's like a light bulb opened in my head. Somebody sitting in China 2,000 years ago knew more about what it was to be human than 99% of us did today, and they wrote it all down for us so we could learn it all, and we've just chosen to ignore it apart from certain people for centuries. And that's it. The one best thing I get for stress is, why are you stressed? I've got a deadline. And Lao Tzu wrote 300, 400, 500 years ago, I don't remember exactly how many, he wrote something along the lines of it, nature has never hurried, and everything gets done in its time. And it's like, duh, that's so obvious. Why didn't I think of that? But we create all the stress and strain for ourselves in our rat race of trying, and we put deadlines on ourselves. And that's one of the things I've done now. Like today, I came from a previous meeting, but I leave enough time between one meeting and the next to walk. And I walked from the centre of town up to here, present in the moment, no headphones in, no podcasts, just looking around me, smiling at people, watching what was going on, listening to the traffic, listening to the sound, thinking about what I was going to do this afternoon, thinking about what I was going to do this evening. And I arrive here energized and refreshed. I'll go back and do the same thing again. Everybody else hops into the car, meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, because we've convinced ourselves that we can't spend 10 minutes on ourselves during our working day somehow. Whereas all you have to do is spend that 10 minutes and your life is infinitely richer and your mental health infinitely better. Because mental health and mental illness are not the same thing. Everybody has mental health, in my opinion, and it's good or good or bad, bad or good, whichever way around you want to go. And you just slide up and down the scale depending on what's going on and how well you cope with it. But to think it's something that's fixed or broken, it's just counterintuitive. You're not physically fit at Mo Farah's level without training, training constantly, doing all the right things to fuel the body and all the rest of it. The principles apply exactly the same to every high-performing athlete and sportsman in the world. They put as much effort into training their brains as they do into training their bodies. But the vast majority of us just expect ourselves to be okay without ever having done it. And that's part of the fact that we never talked about anybody having mental health problems. We still don't talk about it, really. So again, it's that back to the stigma thing.
Incredible, and the ancient wisdoms, as you say, it's amazing what has been written hundreds and thousands of years ago, and the understanding that people had back then is just incredible. People are people still today. It's just amazing.
Yeah, but humanity hasn't really changed. If anything, it's grown more disconnected from yourself, more disconnected from nature, more disconnected from the world around you. Whereas back then, the real thinkers just instinctively understood it. And there's a lot to be learned just from. It doesn't have to be reinvented. It doesn't have to come in a meme for it to have meaning. And it's amazing once you start reading some of the old stuff, how many of the so-called influencers and influential thinkers and are just bringing out everything that's ever always been done before, hundreds of years before, and just repackage it as themselves. And again, it's just, I say the journey starts with knowing yourself and ends with knowing yourself. Because when you start to know yourself and you move through your journey, and you get to the end, you're a completely different person to when you started. So it's time to do it all over again. So it's like the Kaizen approach from, incremental improvement. And that's, if you constantly work at it, you don't need to do big things. It doesn't need to be a road to Damascus moment. It just needs to be small, little incremental improvements all the time, and you will always reap the benefit of them because it's never going to do you any harm.
So what's the common misconceptions?
And as I said with the first one, it's that you're weak, that somehow there's something wrong with you if you're not mentally fit, that you're meant to be mentally fit the whole time, that it's just somehow naturally given to you, and you don't have to do anything to maintain it. It just will always be there. The other kind of things is the understanding that the voice inside your head is never your friend, ever. Its job inside your brain, there's loads of good books about it, one by Professor Peters, The Chimp Paradox, and he basically talks about the inner chimp inside your brain that keeps rattling your cages and all the rest of it. Its job is to look after you and keep you safe. Your limbic system, your fight, your flight, your freeze, its job is to keep you safe from all the terrors that were wired into it back in prehistoric days. That doesn't help you particularly much in the modern world, but it still has complete control over your body. So people think that you can choose how you respond, but until you've done all the hard work, you can't, because the chimp takes over and you just react. You don't respond to anything, you react to everything. So your text comes in and you're in a bad mood. Okay. You suddenly read that as a whole damning, okay. Really, that's all you've got to say to me, okay, what's got you? And it's nothing to do with the person, nothing to do with the okay. It's all about how you've chosen to perceive it. You get up in the morning and stub your toe and tell yourself you're going to have a terrible day. You're going to have a terrible day. It's you create this self-fulfilling prophecy in your own head that I'm having a terrible day. So everything that goes wrong, you blame on having a terrible day, and you spiral down and your thoughts get worse. And again, so the power of the mind is huge. People don't want to take responsibility for their own thoughts and their own actions. It's always easier. For me, I blamed my PTSD for all the really stupid things I did. The alcohol, the drinking, the dangerous behaviour. It was all the PTSD's fault. The PTSD made me do it. No. I did it. Take ownership. And when I took ownership, the world changed. I didn't have anywhere to hide then. Wow. So I would say that's the last one. People just don't want to admit to their own faults. And it's a hard thing to do. You're not going to do it overnight, but it's when you can be self-critical and self-assess yourself and be truly honest, it makes a huge difference.
Incredible. And is there techniques that you've used then?
There are lots and lots of techniques out there. There's all the clinical techniques. There's, cognitive behavioural therapy, EMDR. There's all different types of talking therapy. Those are what the specialists all do. The clinical specialists, the medicals, the psychotherapists, the counsellors, even the coaches and coaches and mentors. They've all got their programs of work, and they're all brilliant. Again, all I've done is cherry picked from everybody else that's out there what worked for me, and by able to do that, again, just highlight what was good for me and what wasn't, because I had after 27 years of getting it wrong, of patching together, falling apart, patching together, falling apart, I knew just doing the same old thing wasn't going to work again. So the things I find, if I was to say pick 3 that are absolutely key: stop lying to yourself, be brutally honest to yourself, stop hiding behind the lies, embrace nature. I don't mean go out and run marathons with your headphones and your iPods in while listening to podcasts. I mean, go for a walk and just listen to the birds, pay attention to what's going around you. The healing power of nature is unbelievable when you completely disconnect from everything else and just learn to be present, as the mindfulness people would say, and just enjoy that. It will make an immense difference to your own mental health. And the final one is, although it's ironic coming from a bulimic, do something about your diet. I'm not saying turn into a vegan or anything like that, but if you fill yourself full of crap all the time, you're just going to feel crap. I'm carrying a few pounds, but aren't we all? Because it's dead easy to get stuck into the McDonald's and all the stuff. But again, just some basic understanding of the nutrition on your body. Those 3 things can make a huge difference. My biggest problem when I was my worst was I wouldn't get up, I wouldn't get dressed. I was living on chocolate and sugar and biscuits and just moping around the house in my house coat, and it's just awful. But you just snap out of that. You get your shower, you get your shave, you go for a walk. The world's a different place. You just have to show up consistently and keep doing it.
Yes, and it sounds like you've different tools and techniques for different situations then, different problems.
Yeah, again, as I say, it's a question of, what are you facing, who are you person? So it's back to who are you? What's going on in your life? What's causing you the problem? What are you willing to do to fix it? So then it's about picking the things that will work best to fix it for that person. Again, for me, what I'm doing in the business, it's right back at the beginning. It's giving the people the understanding and the awareness that there are things out there that they should consider, and then signposting them on to them to do it. On my one-to-one mentoring, it's different. I would work directly with people to guide them along the path that I chose, and create a path for them that will work for them. But really there's lots of different things. There are so many different things out there. Journaling is a great one. So basically, go back to being a teenager, get your diary out, and you just talk to your diary. It's one of the things I used because I was in denial about. One of my main problems was survivor's guilt. Nothing ever happened to me. I never got so much as a scratch in 24 years in the military, and I looked for bombs for a living for a good chunk of it. And people around me were getting shot, people around me were blowing up, and I would sail through with never a scratch. And I had this thing in my head that I didn't have a right to be upset or be damaged because nothing had happened to me. So I couldn't see that I was the victim of any trauma of any sort because nothing ever happened to me. And again, that's it. People will tell themselves the most bald-faced lies, but they just, and it makes perfect sense to them because they never question it. It's just reality. Then somebody questioned it and said, "What do you mean it never happened to you? You were 6 foot away from a bomb when it went up." Yeah, but I didn't get hurt. I didn't get scratched. All those good guys died and I'm still here. Why do I deserve to live when I'm such a horrible human being? And your brain will do all this self-reinforcing, and you spiral yourself down, and you've just got to learn to break those patterns. But that's a hard conversation to have with yourself. So you've got to take it step by step, do the hard work. One of the things tricks I use is, somebody pays you a compliment, how do you feel? And if it's uncomfortable, which is most people, that's something you need to work on then, because if you deflect it and you put away, no. Well, this old thing, I've had it for years. You're disparaging yourself. You're disparaging the person that took time out of their day to say something nice to you, and you're dismissing them. But we all do it, and it's so much harder to just turn around and go, "Oh, thank you, Ciaran. What a lovely thing to say. Well, thank you very much." But when you learn to do it, it just changes your whole day. You know, that's like one of the simplest little things I do in my workshops. I make everybody stand up, face each other, and give them each other a compliment. And it is so awkward. Everybody's like, say something nice about their hair. And every people that were the life and soul of the party 5 minutes ago, the alpha in the group that's cracking the jokes. All of a sudden they can't make eye contact, they can't look away, they're all nervous, they don't want to say anything because they've just been moved out of their comfort zone, and that can be incredibly stimulating and rewarding for everybody in the group.
Incredible. And we're talking about many age groups. I guess we started talking about young people, 14, and obviously I'm thinking then back to the where we reinforce messages in our brains and our heads. You reinforcing messages for 40 years, or 35, or whatever. It's a long time to. So different people need different. There would definitely have to be different approaches for different groups, but I think the biggest problem we have now is we think our children are children for far longer than they actually are, and we know they're not adults, but they've been. The classic example is if I took me at 12, and you take my daughter at 12, my daughter at 12 knows about things that I never knew existed at 12 because I'd just never been exposed to them, because they have so much information, because they can Google anything they want. It's all flooding in at them on social media and all the rest of it. So again, and then you throw all the hormones and all the rest of it. It goes in with being a teenager, and you don't have the life experience to cope with it. Being a teenager today is a bloody hard job, I think. And I'll be worried sick about my daughter for the next 6-7 years till we get her through all the hard work, and then I'll do the same thing again with my son. But that's okay. But you just, as long as you understand them, the biggest thing is just to talk to them, not talk at them, not argue. One of the things is, because my son is pathologically demand avoidant, which is an anxiety condition on the autism spectrum, that basically he thinks he's always going to be told to do something, and that triggers his fight, flight, or freeze response. So he overreacts to everything. So I have had to learn a completely different way of talking to him. So I don't say, "Seth, tidy your room." I say, "Seth, we're going out in 10 minutes. What do we need to do before we go out?" "Oh, I need to tidy up, Dad." And off he goes and does it. If I'd have gone into his room and said, "Seth, we're going out in 10 minutes, tidy up," I'd had a tantrum. And it's just because of the way his brain's wired. And you just need to find what works for the people in your life. And then older generations, we just don't like to talk. Men, we don't like to talk where I'll be brutal about it. We don't like to talk where women can hear us for obvious reasons. We don't like to talk where anybody we see as competition with us can hear us. So you're reduced to your own circle of friends that you trust, that you can talk to. But for most men these days, especially our age, that circle is dramatically reduced compared to what it used to be. So that, again, you've just got to find the people that you can talk to. And it doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't have to be a counsellor. It doesn't have to be somebody you're paying for. It just has to be somebody you can be honest with. Amazing. And you think, thinking of the healthcare system, the mental health system, and how people approach it. I'm thinking here locally in Northern Ireland, Ireland, UK, maybe it's something similar. And I'm thinking US and Australia, maybe globally we're ignoring this as a problem. I'm not sure, but even here locally, what do you think?
The mental health services here in Northern Ireland are an absolute breaking point, but the whole health services, and there's many reasons for that. But one of the things I found is that we don't take action until we're broken. So the classic example is you work for, say, one of the big accountancy firms. They will have spent an absolute fortune on an employee assistance program. You'll get your wellness, you'll get your yoga, you'll get your gym memberships, you'll get all of that. It's all available for you to take. You can phone the confidential helpline if you want help. Nobody does any of that until they're already broken. So that's where our problem lies. We don't put enough time, energy into that prevention part of it. We run the engine without a service until it breaks down, then we look to fix it. And by that point, we've done so much damage to it, fixing it is a long uphill battle. So you go to the doctor can't do anything for you apart from listening, maybe give you some antidepressants, put you onto the waiting list to get in and seen. Then when you get in and seen, they've then got to triage you into all the different systems, and you go into another waiting list, and you can be waiting. You're in crisis now, and unless you're physically on the point of harm to yourself or harm to others, the service just doesn't have the capability to deal with you. So the whole point has to be about moving it a bit further down the path, more onus on ourselves and looking after ourselves, more onus on looking out for the people around us, or look after your own clan, your own family, your own friends, and helping everybody where they can. And it's just the talking, because the stigma, everybody thinks they'll be judged. And everybody thinks they'll be judged negatively for saying they have a mental health problem. So the most common thing I get is, you're so brave, because you can stand up there and you can speak about all that. I was a complete coward for 27 years. I ran away from everything I feared for 27 years. I'm an absolute pathological coward. And you're standing there saying I'm a brave. All I'm doing is talking. The brave ones are the people that are in the horrible place, and they get up every day and go to work. They're the brave ones. It's in my opinion anyway. And again, that's the problem. We put people on pedestals, and we want to have these amazing solutions to it. I want a wonder drug, or I want a wonder 7-step program. It's just about doing what you can to help yourself.
Excellent. So advice for everyone watching this then today is talk to each other, talk to your friends, your family, have a chat and say hello.
There is no better conversation, better thing for your mental health than an honest, open conversation with those you love and those that love you. Now, if you can have those things on a regular daily basis, you're probably not going to get to anywhere near as bad a place as you would have got without it. Just knowing you're loved. Funny enough, seen a post today on social media. It was about if you can't look in the mirror and love yourself, how can you love anyone else? And I absolutely adhere to that, because I look in the mirror now and I love what I see. Again, it's not because I'm good looking or anything like that, because God knows I'm not. But I am so happy in my own skin now, because I don't have any lies. I'm not hiding anything from myself or anyone else, so I can just be who I am. And I'm not waiting to be happy, because I know I'm happy. And with that going on, it's so much easier to deal with the rough times. Now, I'm not cured. Not 1 week ago, I had a really bad couple of days, and I was down and I was depressed, and I've drifted back into my old habits. But the difference was I realised it. I took a day to sort myself out. The next day, I put the coping mechanisms I know that work for me back into place. And 2 or 3 days later, I was back to where I was meant to be. Bad stuff happens. It's about how you choose to respond to it.
Incredible, amazing. Well, thank you for sharing all this advice. No, it's an incredible topic, to talk about. I think there's probably no one who's watching this, or that we even know, that hasn't been touched either themselves or know someone that hasn't been affected by this. So it's really very
when you
grateful
talk about suicide, the statistics for how many suicides there are now, and then the ripple effect out from those suicides. Again, it affects almost every single human being in the world.
It's very tough, and the scary thing is, again, no matter, as you say, you haven't been touched by it yet today, like at every age group, old, young, it's incredible. So scary stuff. So again, thank you very much for your time today. So what's next for you? And you're writing a book, or you've written a book?
So I wrote my first book over Christmas, The Stevenson Way, One Man's Path to Better Mental Health. It's just a short explanation of what I did, my path, a little bit of my history, and that's it. So I'm hoping to get that out. My plan is to have that out and published for my 50th, which is in the end of April. So it seemed like a nice milestone to have my first book published. Then in the background is the full autobiography of everything that's gone on in my life, which is a long, convoluted story, but very interesting at the same time, even if I do say so for myself. And it's growing the business, hopefully getting more speaking gigs and more workshops, and just convincing as many businesses as possible to take on the mantle of prevention as opposed to making people more resilient. Again, everything's, we'll go mindfulness, counselling. I would love them to start, addressing the problems head on and engineering out some of the stress in their workplaces. So for me, it's just making myself as visible as possible, which is one of the main reasons to come in and chat to you today. And pushing all my social media feeds out and all that sort of stuff.
Incredible, excellent. If anyone wants to reach out and have a chat to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, my website is www.thestevensonway.co.uk. And my email is scott@thestevensonway.co.uk. So you can get me on either of them, or LinkedIn. I'm an absolute LinkedIn addict.
Wow.
Yeah, every day without fail, I'm on there. I'm on there posting and putting things on and chatting to people and all the rest of it. So between one of those three ways, you can get me. And all the rest of the contact details are on the websites and stuff. And then just sign up to the mailing list or anything if you want to, and then just come and join the conversation, because that's my tagline is: smashing stigma, transforming lives, one conversation at a time, the Stevenson way. So that sums up everything for me. You get the first two by doing the last two.
Incredible, amazing. Well, thank you again for your time today, much appreciated.
Thank you for inviting me in, Ciaran, I've loved it.
Brilliant. Well, and thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed today's chat. What I would do is ask you to hit share in this video, because again, this topic, as we are talking about, I'm sure the fact that you're watching it still now has touched you, and I'm just thinking how many connections would benefit from hearing this conversation today. So please do share, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video. Thank you again.